Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. So our first story about the cool grandson who helped his grandmother get rid of phone scammers. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Scam and harass my grandma? I'll waste your time incessantly. As a little bit of background, my sweet, unassuming grandparents have recently been plagued with some very intelligent phone scammers who are capable of getting enough of their personal information that they actually believe the calls are real. Luckily, I live nearby and am able to teach them/watch over them to make sure nothing happens. One day, my grandparents told me about a particularly horrifying call where the scammer pretended to be my cousin in the hospital, begging them to wire some money so he could pay his bills. It really shook my grandparents up. From there, I made it my mission to waste all scammers' time. I personally seem to get calls from the same 5 to 10 scammers over and over again. I usually play along and answer their questions, giving them fake information. I can make these calls last up to 20 minutes now, which is fine, because I'm usually playing video games when I answer their calls and can multitask anyways. Most of the time, when they realize I'm playing, they get angry and tell me to F off. A year in, some scammers will actually recognize my voice now and go, "Oh crap, it's you," and hang up immediately. In addition, I've reduced my monthly scam call volume by over 60%. I actually did the math. What I miss most about my kids being toddlers is giving them the phone to speak to scammers and telemarketers. And our second story. Want to demand changes and dither about it? Sure. You'll pay, of course. I am a web programmer, among other things, and used to be a consultant at that with a very high-end, very expensive agency. I once had a client who was incredibly anal about the exact wording on their menu. Specifically, at the time, pretty much every website had a section on its main menu that said, "About Us," and they wanted to be different and wouldn't have that, but had to have that section, only not with that name. So we got a writer and a graphic artist and a programmer together, and we sat down and came up with a new label for that section: Portraits. We told the project manager, who told the client, and we all went about our lives. The client got very agitated about it, probably because there was one person there who felt he had to have his finger in every pie. They insisted that they had to decide on a name and the new scope of work their decision would entail. What they didn't bother paying attention to was that the contract said very clearly that they had to keep paying the entire team or they'd lose us. And the moment they asked for any change of scope, all work would stop, but they'd keep paying the entire team full time. So that was the project manager at $300 an hour, me at $300 an hour, the artist at $200 an hour, and the writer at $200 an hour. So $1,000 an hour total. Normally, we wouldn't all be working full-time on the project every day and would only bill the client for actual hours worked, but the contract was very clear that once they told the project manager there would be a scope change, everyone billed for 8 hours a day until they decided, and all work had to stop until the client had either approved us to resume on old terms or finished negotiating a new contract or fired us. So we stopped and billed them 8 hours a day. We wanted to keep working because there was other stuff we could do, but the project manager, who I adore, insisted. They had signed, they could deal with the consequences, we had to stop work. The client was a Fortune 500 company who's mega successful. They really could afford it. Meanwhile, the client paid $8,000 per day while they thought about it. And they thought about it for 4 days before they announced on the morning of the 5th day we'd have a teleconference to discuss it. On the teleconference, we spent perhaps a minute to describe our deliberation process over words, give us a list of words we had rejected, and state that we were all in agreement that portraits was the word for the job. Then the client people started arguing with each other over whether this was the right word. Isn't this other word better? No, that's boring. Well, how about this one? No, that's overused. We all sat in our conference room and looked at each other like, are they out of their minds? And waited as they kept arguing. Literally an hour later, I got a word in edgewise and told them that it was no problem to me how long they wanted to argue about it because I got paid either way. But this meeting was costing them $1,000 an hour in our time. Plus, I don't even know how much for theirs. so perhaps it would be to their benefit to just let us use portraits and get on with it. The boss at that company, who'd been very quiet on the call, chuckled and told his people to suck it up and gave us approval to go on. To be fair, he didn't even balk when he got the bill for $33,000 for one word, although I expect he probably had to look at it twice to believe it. I'm sure he had more than just a word with his team when he was done. They could afford it as a company, but each project has its own budget. And our last story. You want me to drive this truck across quicksandish mud, sludge? Yes. This story is from a buddy of mine who works as a delivery man for large loads of construction supplies. He's absolutely convinced that the internet is out there to scam you and steal your identity and kill you. Therefore, I've taken it upon myself to spend 30 minutes convincing him he's in no danger sharing this through my account and posting it here. My buddy, let's call him TD for now, as he's a truck driver. He works for Do What the Customer Says Inc., DWTCS Inc., which distributes contractor supplies. He drives the trucks that deliver different loads of materials. About a month ago, he was on a job for Strict Butthurt General Contractor, SBGC, to deliver lumber for a housing development being built on marshy land. At the point of his delivery, SBGC had not drained a lot of the area for some reason, except for a few large, deep, isolated puddles. This wood TD delivered was being used to frame up some sidewalks and foundations for some other things. The access road was just packed soil with gravel on top of it. The previous day, to TD's delivery, it had rained hard. When TD pulled the 18-wheeler with a nearly full trailer of lumber, that's about 30 tons just for the wood, to the entrance of the access road, which had fallen into mud sludge with rocks in it. To test the sludge for driving, TD took a paint stick and stuck it into the mess that was the access road. The sink sank down on its own. The housing development was a good half-mile into the marsh, so he called up SBGC. SBGC, hello? TD, yes, SBGC, this is TD from DWTCS Inc., and your access road is too wet and dilapidated for me to deliver the lumber in. You guys have to come out and get it, either in separate trailers or by hand. SBGC, I can't do that. We're in a tight schedule. It'd take hours to unload and take it to the site. TD, I can't do that. I'd get fired, wreck the truck and cargo, and probably a ticket for reckless driving. SBGC, I'm filing a complaint about this. SBGC hangs up the phone. TD's left waiting there for a solid 1.5 hours, and other supply trucks and contractors back up on the road. He gets another call from SBGC. SBGC, screeching, where's the lumber? I expected it over an hour ago. TD, I told you the road is too dangerous for me to drive over. SBGC, just get the GD lumber here. SBGC once again hangs up. TD calls his supervisor. Let's call him Big H, because he was a big help. Big H, hello, TD? TD, yeah, it's me. The service road for Project X is dilapidated, and if I crossed it, it'll bury me and the truck. SBGC insists I drive over it. Big H, I'll drive over there. Big H was the supervisor for the multiple drivers for the development, so he worked nearby. It took 30 minutes for him to get there, with 2 more angry phone calls from SBGC and the line of contractors getting longer. Big H gets to the scene. SBGC is called out to meet with Big H. Big H, supervisor of the drivers servicing this area for DWTCS Inc. Here we have a problem with the service road. SBGC, there's no problem with the GD damn road. Your driver just refuses to go across anything other than perfect asphalt. Be aware, the service road had dried a little, so it looked a bit better than in the morning, but still dangerous driving territory. The packed soil had fallen apart, so it was just semi-wet dirt piles and gravel drying in the 10:30 a.m. sun. Big H, road seems fine to me, let's test it. Big H borrows concrete boots from another contractor waiting in line and walks onto the ground. Surely enough, he starts sinking. Big H, yeah, we can't drive over this. The truck could sink real bad in this stuff. It's quicksand without the sand. SBGC, I don't effing care. I need this lumber now. SBGC storms off, leaving all the viewing contractors, including Big H and TD, dumbfounded. The trucks are DWTCS's property, however, the trailers and their cargo are often rented or borrowed in the name of the contractor that subcontracts us. The trucks are owned by DWTCS, and they can detach cargo from in the cab, per company policy, in an emergency, discard cargo, and prioritize the safety of yourself and the truck. SBGC contacted Big H's supervisor. He was told to tell TD to just drive across it. Big H told his supervisor he'll only accept if SBGC signs a liability contract. He handwrites a contract in his truck saying any and all damage will be the liability of SBGC and must be paid to DWTCS. SBGC comes back and signs the contract with a smug grin on his face. TD jumps in his truck and gathers everything important while Big H takes pictures near an oblivious SBGC. TD drives the truck onto the road, makes it so that the trailer is 3 feet away from the edge of the road before the truck starts sinking past the point of no return. TD detaches the cargo and tried to get the truck to escape, but is unable to. Remember, multiple-ton truck. This crap is heavy. The truck is already about a fifth of the way submerged when TD releases the trailer. As the mud surrounds to about 1/3 of the way up to the trailer, the engine is sputtering as it overtakes the truck and gives up. TD panics and abandons ship. He shoves the door. Nothing. The mud is too deep. The window makes it 2/3 the way before the battery gives way to rising mud flood. TD has his G.I. Joe instincts kick in and smashes the rest of the window out and claws his way out of the truck. There, a mildly concerned Big H and livid SBGC stare at TD as he makes his way across the top of the sinking lumber, where it stops sinking about halfway into the quicksandy mud. Big H turns to SBGC and says the most triumphant words ever, "Big H, lumber delivered. Since you signed the liability contract, I'll send you the invoice for everything." $80,000 went to the company, plus taxes and fees, and the price of the actual lumber delivery. SBGC tried to argue against it in court, but failed miserably. Don't make holes in your sinking ship, kids. Jump out of it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.